Guys, what's going on? This is Matt with Patriots Corner. Now, I got a special guest. We're jumping out west right now. The Montana Mountain Man, Peter D'Antonio, is on the show. Pete, what's up, dog?
How's it going, Matt? Doing pretty well. What's up with yourself?
Not too much, man. Everything's pretty peaceful. You're out there in the beautiful neck of the woods right now. I mean, I know I've been to Cody, Wyoming when I was in 8th grade, and the West is, I think, one of God's most beautiful creations.
Oh, it is. It's a huge tradition out here. Ever since the first explorers that came out here, it still looks the same to whatnot. Development's being put together, but you can still enjoy the beauty.
Absolutely, man. Now, Pete, when I found you, I thought that your Instagram page was absolutely and totally kick-ass. You are an avid hunter. You're an adventurer.
That is correct. It's more than a hobby for me. It's my lifestyle, and I try to make it that way.
Now, where did that all kind of spawn from? I mean, because you're not originally from Montana.
No, I'm not. No, I actually grew up back east. I grew up on the New Jersey-Pennsylvania border, and I was born in Princeton, New Jersey, of all places.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, right. And what brought me out to Montana is a story of itself. But my dad grew up hunting, and he introduced us to us as kids. New Jersey was regulated, and it still is, to shotgun and muzzleloader and bow. So I didn't really get into rifle hunting until I went to Pennsylvania, and then I transitioned more into rifle, and then later into my life into bow. But I definitely my dad. He just like the rest of us, he grew up hunting. We had somebody that influenced us in our lives, and it happened to be him. And just going to hunter safety course at 10 years old and being in there and getting the thrill of it. And even before that, he would come home with deer and just waiting for him, to come home late at night from a day's hunt and come back and seeing that was just such a rush.
Oh, I believe it, man. It's wild. It's a small world, too. I'm from New Jersey. I think when we talked about this, you were by Bucks County, right?
Yeah. I grew up in Mercer County, and I went to school in Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
No
and,
way.
Yeah. It's definitely a small world, isn't it?
Absolutely, man. My father and I, we were talking about, we members of the Bucks County Fishing Gun Club.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal club. It definitely is, and that makes that world even smaller.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. But the hunting there, I mean, is nothing compared. You're out there in, I mean, I won't want to get too ahead of myself because I definitely want to jump into some of your stories because I know you got tons. But you're out there amongst, predator after predator. We're talking grizzly bears, man.
Yeah, and that was a huge transition. Grizzly bears, wolves, mountain lions. I mean, the East has, what we call a cougar is a mountain lion. There's so many different names for it. In Florida they call it a puma. But yeah, that whole transition, because back east we don't really have those types of predators. I mean, there's rumors of mountain lions or cougars, but we have the traditional, coyote and black bears. So I was akin to that, but moving out west and just being in grizzly country, when I first moved here, I had an understanding just doing my own research, but I'd never seen a grizzly in the wild when I first moved out here. I only saw them at Yellowstone Park or at Glacier National Park, but to be out in the woods and just looking for game, and when I first moved out here, I was fearless. I really, didn't be cautioning at all. I would just tromp around, go to deep, thick brush areas. And when I really first had my first encounter, that was a huge wake-up call for me.
I would think so, man. Oh my God, that is intense. And when you first got there, were you kind of like, nothing's really gonna bother? I mean, because we're talking about the transition from PA. PA and New Jersey border. I'm also on the Pennsylvania border, right by Stockton area.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, and there is tons of black bear. They're overpopulated.
Tremendously. Tremendously.
So the transition of size and, I guess, fear is huge.
It is, yeah. Like you said, I was fearless and I was ignorant. Ignorance was probably the most, I was using, when I learned how to elk call years ago, I didn't think too much of it. Or if I was coyote hunting during that time, I'd be in really thick areas where the open would be, so I can spot them from above. Um, and I really didn't think much of it. And then people started telling me, you shouldn't really be doing that here in this state. We have these type of predators that are now coming into stuff like that. And that's actually how I first saw my first grizzly in Montana, was during that.
So, if we want to go ahead and jump in, if you can, on the more so of the first encounter you had with a grizzly bear, because I've only seen one. I don't even know if I've ever seen one in the zoo. Probably I have. Movies. I'm a big Jeremiah Johnson fan myself.
Oh, very nice. Jeremiah Johnson, Jedediah Smith. We can talk about that too.
Yeah, all day, man. But
Right.
what was your first encounter like from start to finish? Because I'm sure you remember it like it was yesterday.
Oh, I do. I do. See, it was in the fall of 2011, and I bring my rifle out that year. I just had my shotgun. So, of all funny things, I just used to hunting with my shotgun back east in Jersey because I hunted more in Jersey than Pennsylvania. And I had actually a 20 gauge 2 3/4. I was using slugs, and so I tried to find like river bottom areas where I could hunt and not have to shoot too far because shotgun can only go so far with those types of slugs. And so I was hunting on river bottoms, and moving out to Montana, everybody has their little honey holes, and for an out-stater, particularly from the east, they're not going to tell you where to go. So I tried to do my own research, and I was just finding these little pockets of public land that you're allowed to hunt during, general deer season. And so I found this little area about where I lived and decided to go check it out during the season. Didn't even do any scouting, just, driving by and going for hikes. In the past summer, I'd see a lot of whitetail there. So I'm like, they're crossing over from these farms, from these parcels. And I know in the rut, they're going to be crossing over to this area as well. And I never really saw too many people in there, but I decided to give it a shot, hunting like an Eastern hunter. I posted up. I didn't do any stalking or any glassing, didn't get into that too much. And so I started to post up in this one open area, but it was very, very brushy up on this ridge. And I saw a deer come around, and I decided, you know what, I'm just going to try to stalk them a little bit. It's getting a little bit later in the day, and I was married at the time, and I'm like, I gotta get home, but I'm just gonna make a final push on them and see if I can cut them off and try to take a buck. And I was walking through, and I saw the deer that I originally saw, and I tried a little call on them, a little bleep, to see if they come in. But when I was looking at them, their head started to move towards the right, and I'm like,
Their head started moving?
yeah, they started. They saw me, but they stopped and they looked behind them.
Oh, shit.
And I'm like, what are they looking at? Being ignorant that I was. And I look towards the right, and there's a grizzly coming down on this little ridge, or saddle, you'd probably call it, coming right down. And he just looked at me, probably about 100 yards off, and I just looked at him. So,
Well, let's pause
yeah,
right there for a second because that's intense, man. Oh my God! So you're
yeah.
out there. How many miles are you into the woods right now?
I wasn't that many miles that first time I hunted in Montana.
Are you
I
by
was
your car
probably,
though?
what?
Are you by your truck or car or?
I was probably about half a mile away from my car.
Oh my
Not even.
God, dude!
Yeah. And I definitely could tell the difference of a grizzly in the wild and a black bear. I'm like, that is not a black bear, because black bears in Montana could have a cinnamon phase or a blonde phase, but it had that, big head, distinct hump on its back, and I can clearly tell and identify it. That was a grizzly bear. Now, being ignorant that I did the one thing you should never have done, and I actually scooted and ran. I
I would
ran
have
back.
probably done the
I
same thing, Pete. Yeah.
I did the same. I did what you're not supposed to do, and I kind of just ran down the hill, and I just unloaded when I got down, and ran even faster to my car. And I actually ran so fast that when I got my car, put the gun in, and I flew, and my heart was just pumping. And I went so fast, I got pulled over by a highway patrolman because my heart was still pumping because it scared me that bad, being ignorant. And
Oh
that was
God.
really a wake-up call for me during that time. But when I got pulled over, the officer was like, "Why are you going so fast, and why are you heavily breathing?" I'm like, "Well, right up this road where we're allowed to hunt." I'm like, "I just saw a grizzly." And he went back to his car and obviously talked to me a little bit later, and I was fine.
Did he
But
write you a ticket?
no, he actually gave me a warning. He
That's
gave me a
good then.
warning. But I think he did call it in though, because in Montana they want you to report all grizzly sightings, and particularly where this area is there's a lot of houses where it was. It wasn't like a very wild open area. I mean, it was area you're allowed to hunt with your bow or your shotgun, so there weren't developments that far away.
So when you saw this bear, this grizzly bear, was it looking straight at you?
Yeah, he saw me and he stopped. And, I mean, a couple of seconds can seem like an hour with that for the first time. That was my experience with it.
When you were running, were you looking back at all? Like, did you think that this guy was chasing you down?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure your head starts to play tricks on you at that
Oh
point.
yeah, I thought it was gonna be like Jurassic Park or The Edge or something. To be honest, I know that sounds silly, but I'm like,
Dude, it doesn't
wow,
sound silly at all.
I'm running away, and that was just my ignorance during that time, transitioning, and I was younger, and I just like, you know what, I'm just gonna book it, and yeah, I did. I thought he was like right on me, but he wasn't,
And he just stayed.
and I assume he did. I don't know. It was that fast. I kind of just turned around and ran right down the hill.
Now, these predators, they're primarily extremely aggressive, don't they say from time to time?
Yeah, with my other experience with them, I'm very wary. I don't let it get in my head. A lot of people see sun and grizzly bears and they think, I mean, you have a better chance of getting hit by lightning than getting attacked by a bear, depending on the circumstance. If it's sow cubs and you're in her area, she's going to come and sneak around. If she wants, she's protecting her babies. If you kill a big animal in the backcountry and you leave it there for a little bit, if you're by yourself and you take an elk and you're doing trips packing out the quarters and you come back, there's been so many incidences that they're right there. They're right there. They
Well,
are. And you just gotta be wary about it.
what I find most prideful and interesting is even though that you've displayed that you're, saying, I mean, running and that's not what you're supposed to do, you still touch on the fact that you got down to a good spot to where you unloaded and then made it back to your car. Are you a big believer in gun safety, I'm sure.
Oh, big time, big time. When I grew up, the rule was do not load until you're actually going to be posting up or in your stand, because we would tree stand hunt as well, and that was a big thing. Don't load up because accidents can happen even with safety. There's your safety is your finger, but you should definitely have your safety on. Muzzle direction, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, let me ask you this then. I mean, even on this topic, it's a great point that we could touch on. What would be your opinion on that guy, Timothy Treadwell?
Um,
You ever see
well,
that movie, Grizzly Man?
yeah, I think everybody has to some extent. They definitely have. I actually enjoy the documentary. I think he was extremely. I like using that word ignorant when it comes to situations like that. I think those bears, just like you hear stories of guys, being accepted with wolves or being accepted with a pride of lions. I think they accepted him truthfully.
You do think that
Now,
they accepted him?
I do. I think the FWP in Alaska would say differently because he got fined tons of times for not putting little electric fences around his camping area. He refused to. He also didn't have any type of protection. I think he just carried bear spray. He was an activist against hunting, like he said in that documentary. And I think he was a little out there as well. Crazy would probably be the best definition for him.
I would say,
I think
yeah.
I think it was a beautiful story, um, but I think he was just too ignorant. He was an actor trying to become his own wildlife biologist with no training whatsoever. They're an apex predator, especially during their own rut, because bears have a rut, and they don't care who's there. They really don't. And unfortunately, he stayed too late, and the wrong bear came in and Said, "This is my area," you know.
Well, do you think? And I watched the documentary as well, and I thought it was very kind of how you had said, yeah, like displaying a sign of ignorance, and I mean, it definitely takes uh, the sense of courage to obviously do that. But I mean, going into the topic and the point is that you being out there and knowing the safety behind these animals and still having a respect for them. I mean, I'm just trying to fit in and to see where somebody would go and do that. It's
Um,
extreme, you know what I mean?
that is extreme. It's the definition of extreme. Um, I makes you wonder too. Maybe he just had a thrill for it. Maybe he found something one time, and he realized that, this is what I'm gonna do for my life. He did a research or whatnot and said, "This is what I'm gonna do." And I can't explain it for him. I can't talk for him for what he did, but that's my assumption.
When you experienced your first encounter with the grizzly bear, did you kind of say to yourself, I'm going to tend to stay away from this kind of
Oh,
plot of
I said to
land?
myself, for that next time, I'm gonna prepare myself for what the worst situation could happen. Um, that was my feeling on it. Is what can I do to prevent myself? And you can't predict where a bear is going to be. You definitely can't. You gotta prepare. Bear spray is the most effective thing for that. Um, it's just a very even if you only firearms or whatever, bear spray is the best thing. So I actually carry one thing of bear spray. I carry a Glock 20 10 millimeter Generation 3 on me, and that's about it. Some guys carry 12 gauge shotgun with 3.5 inch slugs or number six shot or whatnot. But it's all how you want to prepare yourself and what research that you do. If you get a big game animal down, pack it out as fast as you can. You can always take pictures later. You know.
And do you feel that you need to carry a sidearm? Obviously, I mean, because I'm a big fan of watching like Alaska: The Last Frontier, the Bush People. I think they're a little bit wacky. Bear, um, but I watch all that stuff on Discovery, History Channel, and they're always big on carrying sidearms.
I am too. I am, but their adrenaline, is so crazy. And if you're gonna shoot a grizzly bear, you gotta accept the precautions that's gonna happen later, depending on what state you're in. There's definitely gonna be. I mean, you don't think about that when you squeeze the trigger, but before you do, you have to say, well, God forbid this was to happen and I was to shoot this thing. You know, they are federally protected, and they are trying to work into, open up some tags in Idaho and Wyoming, and Montana is trying to work on it as well. They definitely are, but but yeah. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's my little man.
That's okay, man. Don't worry about it. Yeah, and what were you saying?
But yeah, but in Wyoming and Idaho, they're trying to hand tags out to sea because they have become so overpopulated. They are trying to hand some tags out to see how that goes this year. And I think Montana's gonna try to do it next year, but they're sitting back on it right now.
What's the big thing too right now? Isn't there some kind of government related restriction and blocking going on in Montana with bear hunts? They have a block on it right now, don't they?
From what I heard, they've been trying to figure out how, because they feel like a lot of people feel like the grizzly population in Montana, in certain areas, not all areas, in certain areas, um, have come back tremendously. And conservation, which hunting is huge with conservation, needs to take place. And Montana's the past couple of years has been trying to legislate how they can hand out a couple tags every year, to get that population down, but it's been denied over and over again.
And why are they trying to put a restriction on it? Because people are, I mean, is there issues where people are just kind of killing to kill or what?
I think a lot of it has to do with activists. I think PETA and whatnot, and they just don't want people. They feel like that the grizzlies population isn't there, and there's so many different reasons. But I think the biggest thing is that they see it as an endangered species, which personally I think that it's not. And the amount I've seen on my hand is just 10 times that, So it's up to them. It's up to the biologists. I know some of them want it, some of them don't want it. In other states, they want it that bad, and that's why they're handing out these few tags in Idaho and Wyoming.
Now, what's your opinion on PETA?
What's my opinion on PETA?
I'm going to tell you something down here. I have a good friend who lives
People
out
eat
here.
tasty animals?
Yeah. I have a good friend who lives out here in western Pennsylvania who was telling me a story about how I guess some activist, the reason there's boar running around in the western Pennsylvania mountains right now is because some activist got into somebody's farm and broke down a fence and let him out. Little did the idiot know that now people were going to be hunting them. You know what I mean? So it's, oh,
Exactly.
God.
Exactly. And unfortunately, you have idiots like that. They just don't know the circumstances. They don't know, there's a lot of biology to it. They don't know the population per capita. They don't know the surrounding area. They don't know things that are not reported. And they just go off of it because they hate it. And nothing can change their mind. They're set on their ways, and that's it. It's like talking to a brick wall. Even if you bring all the scientific proof to them, it wouldn't matter. To them, that would be a lie. And no, there isn't any right to it. And they don't understand that, self-reliance, that's what it is. It's self-reliance. It's saying, hey, I'm going to go hunt for my food. That's in our DNA. That's how, our primitive ancestors lived. And it's healthier than store-bought food. You know where your food is coming from. But for them, it's like, why do you need to do that? It's murder. You can go get food, at a grocery store. But if they saw what, some way cows are actually killed, it's horrifying. If you Google that itself, you probably would never eat a cow again. But it's much more humane than going to some type of place like that.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely something that kind of goes into play with. I mean, honestly, it's been going on for years and everything else, and it's just going to keep continuing. Activism within animal rights, and I mean, this is something that I think a lot of people don't understand is that just because you go hunting does not mean that you don't respect what you're hunting. I would find that I'll make the assumption that I think a lot of these activists would sit down with Sitting Bull if they went back in time, but they wouldn't realize that he and his tribe were hunters themselves. You know what I mean? It's very, it's like
Exactly.
cross-examining type of thing.
Exactly. Right on the money with that. It definitely is, and they'll never. Now there are big reasons for it because there are trophy hunters. Being in the guiding industry, there are trophy hunters, and it's business. So you just kind of keep your mouth quiet about it and just let them do their thing because they are a client, and you gotta accept what they want to say, even if you have different beliefs on it. But I've had guys kill trophy deer, and all they wanted was the backstrap, or they just wanted to get it mounted, and that was it. And then you have about 100 pounds of deer meat just sitting in the freezer that they never wanted to do, and stuff like that. Kind of, for me, it's an irritation, but it's a business as well. But then you have clients that come out and they want the whole deer, and they sit there and quartering it up, obviously, and they want to participate in it because it's either their first elk or mule deer, and they're East Coast hunter like originally I was, and it's an enjoyment, and there's nothing better than that, self-reliance.
Absolutely.
And the African hunting thing, people see that, and some things I agree with African hunting, and some things I don't. A lot of that stuff, a lot of those exotic animals go to the tribes. A lot of people think it doesn't, but it does. It feeds that village. It's just conservation. But activists don't see it like that. They're thinking, oh, they're killing this elephant, or they're killing this lion or whatnot. The tribes approve it. They do.
Have you ever been over outside of the country hunting? Have you ever been over to Africa? I mean,
No, no. That'd be a dream. That's a dream. I wish I said I could or I have, but maybe someday in my life I'll be able to have that luxury to go do that.
Likewise, likewise. That would be very cool. Now, Peter, you do a lot of horseback hunts too, don't you?
Yeah, yep. I've done a lot of horseback hunts. I've done a lot of ATV. I did a lot of foot. Horseback hunts are a lot of fun. It's just the old traditional way, and it's actually a style that's dying off. A lot of outfitters are breaking away from the horses, and that's primarily because a lot of customers can't ride, or I try to, don't like to say it, but there are weight restrictions for horseback riding, and people think a mule on one side can hold 250 pounds, but with a person on weighing like 300 plus pounds wants to ride a horse, even on a mule, it's just going to destroy its kidneys. But
Oh God.
and you gotta have a lot of insurance, liability insurance. But the ones that are doing it, good for them because it's a real tradition of the West, packing mules. And another big thing that's turning on right now is packing llamas in and packing goats. They're just a lot easier than dealing with horses. They definitely are.
Now, so are they just literally packing? Like, are we talking saddlebag type of stuff for these guys carrying equipment, etc.?
Yeah, they call it deckers and sawbucks. And yeah, if people don't know what that is, you could definitely Google it. But um, it's like two saddlebags on one side, and get something called a mani. What a lot of artists use. It's like a canvas type thing that they put on the ground. You can use. I've seen them use. Let's see, old tent covers. I've seen them use. Actually, I saw one outfitter use trash cans before. Whatever you can tie up and cinch to the side, you could use.
So, how does one like yourself get involved, Peter, with horseback hunts, guide work, hunting guide work, and have come? I mean, in Pennsylvania, I mean, it's very rural. But did you ever have any of this type of training before you went off to Montana?
No, I didn't. When I was a kid, I did a little bit of horseback riding, but that stopped until I moved to Montana. And I actually went to a program for it was a guide school. I went to a guide school here in Montana because I was working for an outfitter, but it was on foot and it was non-horse operated. But I just kept seeing, all these old pictures, and I'm like, you know what? This is something that I really want to do. It definitely is. I saw people do it and read stories about it. So I enrolled in a school in the Swan Valley in Montana, and they had excellent instructors and whatnot who've been doing it for a long time. And and I finished the program, and that's how I learned how to pack and really ride horses into the mountains and doing that type of work.
So yeah, that's absolutely incredible. I'm sure you still get the same thrill that you do when you first jumped on the horse.
I do, and I took a break from it for a little bit, and I went back on foot. And when I was guiding in eastern Montana, I had the pleasure to be able to go do that for an outfitter, and I had thrill, though I wasn't on a horse, but just the scenery itself and seeing where the wagon wheels came through and the first explorers, and just think to myself, my God, these guys, some walked on foot and some had horses, and there's just a lot of history of it, and that's what I just love. And so I took a break from it from a little bit, and I'm going back to it again, and I'm really excited about it.
That's incredible, man. Well, I wanted to ask you before we sign off, do you have any other wild, wild stories out there in the western Montana beautiful skies?
Absolutely. I can tell you a story of my last grizzly encounter if you'd like to,
Absolutely, man. Go on.
when I had a little bit less ignorance. Absolutely. It was back in 2015, and I took a job over in Lincoln, Montana. The outfitter was located, and we're going to the Scapegoat Wilderness part of the Bob Marshall. And we're clearing trails for the Forest Service because a lot of outfitters do contracting to help out the Forest Service during the springtime. This is during the spring bear hunt in Montana, and before the customers came out, we had to really clear all the trails so that when we get the customers, we can get them on the horse and then go up to upper camp. And so basically, me and this other guy went out just on foot, and we were just clearing trails, and it rained the night before, and we're cutting away using hand saws, now electronic, chainsaws, because now allowed where we were at. So we're busting away and making a lot of racket, and I'm walking down the trail, and there's this giant print in the mud, and the guy I was with, he looked at me, and he's like, "That's a really fresh grizzly print." And there's been known of a local grizzly in that area that the Forest Service has known about, and other guides have guided for this outfitter, so we've seen him during this time. Just be caution going out there. He's a local bear. That's like his little sanctuary kind of a thing. And we're like, okay, so we brought the proper stuff with us before we went out, and lo and behold, there's a fresh print. While we're doing that, we just hear busting the brush behind us. And I automatically took my pistol out, and I didn't load around or whatnot, didn't chamber around. And the guy I was with took his pistol out. And it was just a large crash coming through. And we're like, what the heck was that? And we stop and pause for a little bit. And then you could just smell him. And they just smell like garbage or just death kind of a thing. We're like, he's right here. We start looking around a little bit more, and he just stands up, and he's probably much closer, probably about like 20 yards away, right in our face, looks up, puts his nose in the mouth, nose in the air, and starts sniffing around, and then drops back on too. And we're like, okay, what are we gonna do with this? And I go look for my bear spray, because I do not want to shoot him, because in my mind I'm a little bit calmer than that first occurrence was years before. And I'm like, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my bear spray and use that. So while I was doing that, the guy behind me started patting me on my back, and you just see him busting again. But it was a false charge. And he just looked at us, huffing, puffing, and we just go, hey, bear, And the guy I was with put about 2 shots in the air, just bang, bang. And he just turned around and booked it the other way.
Hey, bear will save your life. Bigger than itself, right? Is that
Exactly.
the plan?
Just put your hands up, And that is a technique that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work, depending on the bear. They got minds of their own. And that sometimes works. Just put your hands up in the air. Hey, bear. Letting him know, you're not intimidated. Slowly move back. But I definitely recommend, going with the bear spray first, and the last resort would be whatever type of firearm you have on you.
That is very cool, man. Well, hopefully I get a chance to get out there, man, and go out on some hunts with you.
Yeah, man, you're welcome anytime. You just let me know.
That'd be very cool. Peter, thank you so much. The Montana Mountain Man on Patriots Corner. Dude, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Hey, man, we'll do one again soon.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you, brother.
Alrighty, brother. I'll see you.
All right. See you.